So, as we begin, we are here today to talk about the pathway to a clean energy economy being through the ballot box, just talking about how our votes and the choices we make in the ballot box impact the clean energy economy. We have Kate Bowman from Vote Solar with us today. So, thank you, Kate, for joining us and for giving us a little bit more information on this topic and looking into that. My name is Tatiana Johnson. I'm an organizer with Mi Familia en Acción. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit or civic organization. I'll share a little bit more about us in the coming slides, but while we get started, let's go ahead and do a quick icebreaker activity to get everyone kind of familiar with the topic that we are going to discuss today. So for this icebreaker, we'll be making a word cloud. If all of you will take out your phones, if you're not using your phone for your Zoom and scan this code, you should be able to contribute words to our cloud, and they should show up here. So the question that I would like you guys to think about is, what words do you think of when you hear the term clean energy economy? So I've put the word solar down. Obviously, that's one of our big points today that we'll be talking about. As these words come in, maybe since we're a smaller group, we can all share some of the words that we've added to the cloud. If you'd like to raise your hand, I can you can unmute yourself and you can share your word. All right, we've got health, environment. Jessica, did you want to share?
Sure. I'm the one who put health. I think health is definitely well, for me, it's super important. We think about our families. I have a toddler. So I think overall health, super important when it comes to the aspect of clean energy as well.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing. Environment, happy planet. I like that one. That's a good one. Did you put that, Vanessa?
Yes.
Saves money with a question mark. So we've got someone who's not so sure. I think that's what the question mark means. Hopefully we'll be able to answer that question, or Kate will be able to answer that question for you in terms of solar energy when we think about a clean energy economy. Well, thank you all for putting your words into this cloud. I really appreciate your participation, and thank you for those who shared. So I think we will go ahead and go on to the next slide now. This is just a little bit about Mi Familia en Acción. Like I said, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan civic organization. Our goal is to help educate and empower the Latino community to have a better, safe, healthier, and a thriving community through civic engagement and voter education. So that's what we're here for today. And I'm happy that all of you are able to join us, and also that Kate is here as well to contribute to our mission. With that being said, I'd like to toss it over to Kate. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that you can share yours. Kate is the regulatory director at Vote Solar, and she's prepared a great presentation for us. So if you have any questions, make sure to jot those down. We'll be going into breakout rooms after. Actually, since we're a small group, we'll probably just do it all together, but we'll be able to discuss those questions at the end of her presentation. So take it away, Kate.
Thank you. All right, let's see if this works. Can you tell me, can you see the slides all right?
Okay. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here and taking some time out of the end of your day. I know there's a lot going on, so really appreciate that you're taking some time to learn about clean energy and opportunities to vote for clean energy this fall. And just by way of introduction, Vote Solar is a nonprofit organization. We're fighting for 100% clean energy transition that puts the interests, health, and well-being of people at its center. So we work on state-level energy policy across 26 states to drive solutions that address the leading causes of climate change, which is pollution from power plants that provide our energy and our electricity. And so, I know our vision of a cleaner, more equitable future recognizes that it's not as simple as just switching out the polluting energy resources that we have with clean energy resources and then continuing with business as usual. Right now, clean energy is the most affordable energy resource available, but it's also not accessible to everyone. So, the system that we've built to deliver energy over the last 100 years is just not setting us up for success for the next 100 years. And the problem isn't just that our energy isn't coming from clean energy resources. It's that there's too many families who can't afford their utility bills, especially as summers get longer and hotter and air conditioning becomes even more essential for health and for safety. And our grid was built to deliver power from power plants that are far away from where we live. So when there's a fire or a storm that impacts the grid, that means our power goes out. And we need to build a grid of the future that delivers resiliency so that as we face more frequent and severe weather events and storms, communities have local sources of energy to rely on to keep the lights on. So it's not just about achieving a transition to clean energy, but also giving people more choices and more opportunities to benefit from the clean energy transition and to actually be a part of it and even help shape what our energy future looks like. And the decision makers that are deciding what our energy future looks like are at the Arizona Corporation Commission. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Arizona Corporation Commission and what they do and some recent decisions that affect where our energy comes from. But first, I'm going to start with kind of an overview of where our energy comes from today. I think a lot of people, when you turn the lights on, you don't necessarily think about where that electricity is coming from. And the electricity that we use to power our homes and our buildings, it's a really major source of climate pollution. And when you look at the greenhouse gas emissions across the US, they come from, a variety of different industries and sectors. About 10% of climate polluting emissions comes from agriculture. About 13% comes from residential and commercial buildings directly. So that means emissions that come from burning fossil fuel appliances like a gas stove or a gas furnace, things like that. About 23% are from industry. And then we're left with the two biggest sources, which are transportation, that's cars and trucks, and electric power. And the really great thing about transportation in particular is that emissions from transportation are actually going down over time. So as people switch to electric vehicles or as the standards for fuel efficiency for cars get better and better, the cars that we're driving around are less polluting and they're cleaner. Which means that last quarter of electric power is the one that we really need to focus on and, keep our eyes on and think about how to switch to cleaner sources of electricity that don't produce carbon pollution, because that's going to be really the critical piece to address climate. So when you look at Arizona specifically and where Arizona's electricity come from, there's definitely a trend towards cleaner energy, which is great. But a great deal of electricity in Arizona still comes from fossil fuel plants that have harmful effects on our health and on the environment. About half of Arizona's electricity comes from power plants that burn either coal or methane gas to produce electricity. And fossil fuel power plants produce a number of pollutants that are harmful for our health. That includes things like nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, mercury, and particle emissions, which is what we usually call smog, and climate warming emissions like carbon dioxide as well. So when we breathe in these pollutants, especially in large amounts or over a long period of time, they can lead to serious health impacts like heart and lung disease, asthma, or respiratory infections. And so we also know that power plants tend to be built in and around marginalized or disadvantaged communities, which includes neighborhoods that have low-income families or people of color. So these harmful health impacts are really concentrated in communities where people are already facing other challenges, other sources of pollution, where people have been historically underserved by government programs and are experiencing discrimination. And so exposure to pollution is just another compounding factor that makes it more difficult and that harms communities that are near these power plants. But our electricity doesn't have to come from these polluting power plants, and there's better options out there. And as the cost of cleaner energy technologies has fallen, renewable power sources like wind and solar are making up a larger portion of our electrical grid. So right now, about 15% of Arizona's electricity comes from renewable energy resources, and that's mostly wind and solar. And really in Arizona, you probably will not be surprised to learn that that's mostly solar energy, because there is obviously a lot of sun in Arizona. And so that's just makes it a really great place to invest in solar energy. So solar panels work, very simply by absorbing sunlight and energy from the sun and converting it into electricity. And so, some of the benefits of solar are that there's no pollution from producing electricity, and solar energy also doesn't require any water, whereas, coal and gas plants are pretty water intensive. Solar is a great resource for a place like Arizona because it doesn't need to use any additional water to make electricity. And the cost of solar energy technology has really plummeted over the last number of years to the point where solar is now the cheapest source of electricity available. So I love that question about energy costs question mark. So that's a really important thing to be asking. And solar really is, of the energy resources we have available, it's the cheapest one to produce the electricity that we need. And so, just some stats about Arizona's solar industry. Right now, Arizona's fifth for total installed solar capacity. There's 8,400 megawatts of solar installed across the state, and that's enough solar to power about 1.3 million homes. That's still just 10% of the state's electricity needs overall. So there's obviously a lot of room to keep installing solar and to power more of our homes and businesses with clean energy. But, it's a great economic driver of economic benefits in the state too. There's almost 8,400 people who are employed in the solar industry in Arizona. There's nearly 400 companies operating in the state, and that includes companies who install solar panels, but also companies that make solar panels, or companies that make all of the other components that go into a solar installation, like the electrical parts, the racking that's used to hold them up. And so the total value of the state solar market is nearly $20 billion at this point. And then, some of the benefits of rooftop solar specifically. I think sometimes when people think of solar panels, you think of a big solar farm that's somewhere, out far away from where people live. But solar is really unique because not only is it renewable, but you can also install solar panels on homes and buildings and on your rooftop. So they're producing electricity right where people are actually using it. And this has some other benefits above and beyond just the clean energy and the pollution-free energy. Solar panels, on your rooftop can help to reduce your utility bills because it allows you to produce some of the energy that you need on site and buy less power from the utility, which helps to keep utility bills down. Solar can be paired with storage to improve resiliency. And when solar is paired with storage, that means you can have a source of emergency backup power to keep, critical things charging and powered in the event of a grid outage. Solar panel can also be structured to be owned by a community or by an organization. And so, you can have solar panels on your home. You can also have solar panels at a location in your community where community organizations can, get together and invest in that energy resource and then benefit over the long term. And over the long term, realize, the clean energy and the economic benefits of making that investment in their community. And then, I already mentioned solar energy requires basically no water. You don't need to wash the panels or anything like that. And putting solar on rooftops also helps to conserve open spaces, which means we don't need to develop as much land to produce energy, and we can conserve and preserve land for recreation and for wildlife habitat. So let's turn to talking a little bit about who makes the decisions about where electricity comes from and whether it's from clean energy resources. That would be the Arizona Corporation Commission. And the Arizona Corporation Commission is sometimes called the ACC. And they are a commission that is created and established by Article 15 of the Arizona Constitution. And the ACC's job is to regulate utilities, which includes electric utilities, as well as water and gas utilities. And they also regulate railroads and securities. And so commissioners make the final decisions about what programs utilities offer to their customers, where your energy comes from, and then what prices they're allowed to charge for electricity. And the Arizona Corporation Commission has 5 elected commissioners. They each serve a 4-year term, and they can serve up to 2 4-year terms. Oops. And then Arizona is actually pretty unique in that it's one of 13 states that elects commissioners, as opposed to most states have appointed commissioners. So like I said, there's 5 commissioners. Right now, there's 4 Republican commissioners and 1 Democratic commissioner. That's Commissioner Tovar. And commissioners don't represent specific districts. So they represent the state as a whole, which means you can vote for any of the candidates. You don't need to vote for someone who's necessarily from your district. And commissioners are elected through plurality block voting, which means you can vote for as many candidates as there are vacant seats. So that's pretty different from other races, and that's something people often don't understand. And people often don't know that you can vote for more than one candidate for the Arizona Corporation Commission. So for example, this year there's 3 seats that are up for re-election. Commissioner Marquez Peterson, Chairman O'Connor, and Commissioner Tovar's seats are going to be open this year. And only Commissioner Marquez Peterson is running for re-election. So, those 3 seats are going to be on your ballot, and there's 6 candidates who are running for those 3 seats. So you can vote for up to 3 candidates. And like I said, a lot of times people don't know that, and they only vote for 1 candidate, but you actually can vote for 3. So I think that's something that's different and really important to know, and just kind of be ready for when you go to vote. So we talked about how commissions are responsible for regulating utilities. And the reason that utilities are regulated is because they're privately owned monopoly companies. And so, utilities are private companies, and they're the only company allowed to sell electricity in a certain area. So if you decide you don't like your internet provider, for example, or maybe you don't like your cell phone company, your bill goes up, you can probably switch to a different company, and you have some options. But when it comes to your electric utility, you don't have any choice about which company provides your electricity. It depends entirely on where you live. So this map shows utility companies across Arizona, and the Arizona Corporation Commission regulates the 3 biggest utility companies. So those are Arizona Public Service, which is shown by the area that's in kind of the light blue mint. They serve a really big part of the state. There's Tucson Electric Power, which is the red area around Tucson. And then Unisource Electric, which is the blue area in the southern part of the state. And then those are the 3 regulated utilities. Like I said, there are other utilities that are structured differently across the state that aren't regulated by the Arizona Corporation Commission. The biggest one that's probably the most familiar to folks is Salt River Project. And they're represented by the pink area that kind of surrounds Phoenix. And then there's, a number of other utilities that are either municipally owned and controlled, or they're co-ops, and they're not regulated by the Arizona Corporation Commission. But most people live in an area where you're served by one of those big 3 utilities, and the Arizona Corporation is making decisions about, what they charge you for power and where it comes from. So let's talk about some recent decisions the ACC has made when it comes to clean energy. I think over the last year, unfortunately, we've seen the ACC that has been slowing progress towards more clean energy and really missing some opportunities to take advantage of renewable energy, and walking backwards when it comes to making decisions that protect public health and the environment and allow people to access more affordable energy. So this is just a few examples of some recent decisions that the commission has made over the last year or 2 that affect, where your energy is coming from, and then what your, utility bill looks like. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Renewable Energy Standards Tariff, or the REST, it's sometimes called. And so the REST is a requirement that utilities generate 15% of their energy from renewable resources by 2025. And that was created in 2006. And as you'll note, 2006 was nearly 20 years ago at this point. And so, that was a really forward-thinking move when the REST was created. And in the time since then, a lot of states have passed newer renewable energy standards that are more in line with our understanding of the technology that's out there today and what it costs. And so a lot of utilities have passed standards to, or goals to reach 100% clean energy by a certain target date. And that actually is something that the Corporation Commission considered in 2022. The commission evaluated updating the REST to create a 100% clean energy goal. And the commission studied that for a number of years, and then unfortunately kind of failed to reach agreement on a new target for 100% clean energy. And so kind of left us with the standard that's in place, which is 15% clean energy by 2025. And then, just this past year, the commission actually took that a step further, and they voted to repeal the REST this year in February 2024. And so if that does fully go forward, that leaves Arizona without any requirement for accessing and sourcing its electricity from clean energy. And, as you'll note, 15% by 2025 means that that's coming up next year. And while utilities actually are pretty close to achieving that goal of getting 15% renewable energy by 2025, there's no pathway forward for, what comes next and where to go from there and how to really reach the levels of clean energy access that we know are possible. A second important area where the ACC has a big impact is on expanding access to solar energy, because we know not everyone can put solar on their own roof. Maybe you're a renter, maybe you live in an apartment or a condo and don't have a good roof space for solar. Lots of people just, can't afford the upfront cost of solar panels, or maybe you don't know how long you're going to be in your home, and so you don't know if it's going to be worth it. And a lot of states have authorized something called community solar, which allows homes to subscribe to a solar array that's located somewhere in your community. And so instead of putting solar panels on your own house, you can subscribe to a community solar program, and then in exchange, you get some of the benefits and a share of the benefits and the clean energy and the bill savings that come from that project. So like I said, a number of states have authorized community solar programs so that that's an option that's available to people. And that's actually, again, something that the commission looked at in 2022. And the commission spent about a year studying community solar and trying to decide whether or not to create a community solar program for customers of regulated utilities in Arizona. And the commission did pass a policy statement related to community solar at the start of 2023, but unfortunately it was fairly restrictive, and it resulted in a policy that's just too restrictive for any projects to actually move forward. So we haven't actually seen any community solar programs built or available to the public through that policy. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is fair compensation for solar energy. And this is really important because when somebody installs solar panels on their home or their business, a portion of that energy gets used on site, but a portion of that energy actually gets exported to the grid, where it goes to power, your neighbors or other homes or businesses in the community. And so when energy is exported to the grid, people get compensated for the value of that energy. And in 2017, the Corporation Commission established a policy deciding what the compensation for that exported energy would be. And that compensation is really important to make rooftop solar pencil out for someone who's thinking about installing solar. And right now that the Corporation Commission is currently studying the value of solar, and they're considering whether the existing solar compensation policy should be changed. And then more recently, the ACC actually voted to create a new fee that's a fixed monthly fee that applies to APS customers who have solar, and they created that in March 2024. So, the combination of potentially reducing the value that people with solar get when they export energy to the grid, plus implementing this new fee, just chips away at the savings that you can expect and the bill savings, and it makes solar more expensive and less affordable and less accessible to as many people. So, this is just 3 pretty specific areas where the ACC's decision affects the future of our energy and our electricity grid and access to solar in particular. But hopefully it helps to provide a bit of a picture of, what the Arizona Corporation Commission does and why what they decide is so important for everybody's access to clean energy. And so I wanted to talk to you about some opportunities, and good clean energy policies are really essential to pass the benefits from clean energy onto consumers and help people save money on their utility bills. And the really exciting thing is that right now we have the biggest opportunity of our generation to make investments in clean energy possible and accessible for more people. And you might remember that back in 2022, Congress passed the most significant climate legislation in US history, which was the Inflation Reduction Act. And it was a really big bill. There was a lot of things in the Inflation Reduction Act, but I'm going to talk about 3 specific benefits that are really starting to reach people and help access clean energy and save money on utility bills. The first one is a program called Solar for All. And Solar for All is focused on expanding access to solar energy by making solar more affordable for families on lower moderate incomes. And the Arizona Office of Resiliency was awarded $156 million to provide grants for rooftop solar installations for income qualified families. So this is really exciting. It's a really game-changing opportunity to expand solar to people who previously have just not been able to afford it and benefit. And Solar for All actually also can go to fund community solar programs, which means the benefits can go even farther beyond people who own their homes, but to reach people who, like I said, who rent, who live in an apartment or a condo, and for whom community solar is really the only option to access solar energy. And but that would require Arizona to create an improved community solar policy. So it's really exciting that we have this funding, and I think good policy choices are really essential to make the most of it and make sure that we actually get the funding out the door and to families who can benefit from it. So that program's coming in 2025. There's a second piece of this Inflation Reduction Act are rebates to help people make their home more energy efficient so that your home is using less energy, lower utility bills, and more comfortable, when it's really hot outside, so that the air conditioning is helping to cool your home and not losing all of that air conditioning to the hot summer air outside. And so there is going to be $150 million in rebates available to help families install more efficient appliances or, replace old appliances that aren't working well or make other home energy efficiency upgrades. And then a third benefit are tax credits that go to help reduce the cost of purchasing solar panels or battery storage or a new or a used electric vehicle. So those tax credits were extended and expanded to include more types of clean energy technologies, and they can be used to help reduce, again, the cost of investing in some of these technologies that do cost money up front, but are going to help families be more comfortable in their homes and then save money and reduce their utility bills over time. So these are all really exciting developments, and they're just barely starting to have an impact. As the bill was passed in 2022, and then it takes time to get the money to states, to get the programs implemented, and then to actually get the programs available to members of the public to sign up. So it's a really exciting time, and ultimately the policies that the Arizona Corporation Commission makes are really critical to make sure that we can take full advantage of that funding and allow families to realize the benefits from the historic investments in clean energy. So I'm just going to wrap up with a quick, what you can do. Number one, learn more. This is, I think a lot of people don't know what the Arizona Corporation Commission does, why they should vote for corporation commissioners, or, they don't know that you can vote for as many candidates as there are seats. And so you can vote for three candidates who are running in that race. So, there's lots of time at this point to learn more about the candidates, learn what they stand for, and learn what their positions are when it comes to clean energy, when it comes to making energy more affordable for people, and understand who they are and what they stand for. Second, I think it's really important to talk to friends and family, and I think this is being recorded. You can share it with folks who also maybe don't know what the Corporation Commission does and, why they should care and why they should learn more about the candidates for Corporation Commission. And yeah, talk to friends and family about the opportunity to vote for clean energy and for climate solutions, and let them know, how to learn more. And then, of course, vote, make sure you're registered to vote, look up your polling location, all the things you need to do to be ready to go in November and take advantage of the opportunity to vote for Corporation Commission candidates. So with that, I think we have some time for questions later. But you can always reach out to me if you have other questions, things that come up, want to learn more about what Vote Solar does. And thank you again for tuning in.
Awesome, Kate. Thank you so much for giving that presentation. That was extremely informative. I know I learned so much just from listening and from reviewing that presentation. So we really appreciate you joining us today and teaching us a little bit about solar and the ACC, which, as you mentioned, is one of the most important players in this conversation. So I'm glad that we were able to get a little bit of a rundown on them. As you said, there is an opportunity for question and answer. I'd like to enter our debrief session, which will be, we were originally going to do a breakout room, but instead I think that it would be beneficial if we just all discussed as a group here. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this type of chart. I know that it was very popular in grade school for us to do, like a KWL chart. So something you already knew, something you learned from the presentation, and maybe a question that you'd like to ask Kate. And since we have time, if she's able to answer, then she definitely can do that. So is there anyone who would like to share? You can go ahead and just unmute yourself and go ahead and share.
I can go ahead and share. I want to say thank you, Kate, because this was informative. I learned a lot. So thank you so much for taking the time to prepare this for us. And it was simple and easy to understand. So gracias. Something that I already knew, I knew that the ACC, right, that there were open seats this election, in this upcoming election, and that they regulate, right, some of our biggest utilities. What I did learn is that there's such thing as community solar. I wasn't informed about that. And the question that I have is in regards to community solar, how do we know that that's available in our community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, usually community solar, it gives you the chance to buy power from a project that's something other than your monopoly utility, right? So it's giving you the choice to say, I'd like to buy power from this solar project that's in my community and replace, power from my utility with that power. And so usually states have to authorize that. So there's usually changes that are needed to statute in order to make that possible, especially when it comes to regulated utilities. So like I said, the Corporation Commission considered that and they explored that, and they did create a policy that, it exists. It's theoretically community solar is accessible and out there, but no utility has actually. It was so restrictive that no utilities actually made those programs available to customers. So, it's something that the unregulated utilities like SRP, for example, or if you have a municipal or co-op utility, they aren't as restricted as the regulated utilities. So they could make programs available to their customers if they wanted to. And it's something you could, ask them and tell them you would like community solar and a community solar program in your community, but it's unfortunately, something that's not available to consumers in Arizona yet.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Vanessa, for that question. Is there anyone else who would like to share about something maybe they learned? Even if you don't have a question and you just want to share something you learned, we would love to hear, or if there's something you already knew that you'd like to share. can feel free to do that at this time.
I have a question for Kate.
Sure, go ahead.
So I see a lot of solar panels at like the elementary schools or at colleges here locally in my community. Are they using that energy? Are they selling that energy? Are they running the school with that energy? Do you know, Kate?
Yeah, so they're probably using some of the energy on site. And so especially like a school is a really good example where that building is being used during the day when the sun is shining and when it's generating electricity, right? So schools are actually really great location for solar because the building is using energy during the time when the sun is out and when it's producing energy. And some buildings, it just depends on how it's being used. But if the building's not using energy, like let's say maybe in the summer, if there aren't summer programs there and the school is empty, it's probably not using a lot of electricity and it's exporting that extra energy out to the grid where it goes to, benefit everybody who's using electricity from the grid. You're just putting, locally generated clean energy out onto the grid. And so the building then, the building owner, the school district in this case, would get compensated for every kilowatt hour of clean energy that's put out on the grid. They get compensated for the value that they're providing by supplying the grid with energy. So that's why that value, deciding what that value is really important so that it makes sense to put solar panels on the building in the first place. So they definitely are using, at least a portion of that energy, and the rest of it is going to power other buildings locally nearby.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's a fantastic question. I too see a lot of solar panels in my community as well. So, and I've always been curious about what those are used for. So I'm glad we got some clarification and thank you for asking. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to ask or would like to mention anything? All right. I think
One thing, pretty please.
we have
And
time.
Kate, I just want to know if you've heard of these situations because in our community, when we're walking around canvassing, talking to different people, a concern that I've heard in regards to solar is there's a lot of fraud out there, or maybe people got solar panels installed in their home and they're no longer working. Have you heard of situations like that? What do you recommend for people who maybe got solar panels and they're no longer working, the company's no longer responding to them? Um, have you heard situations like that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And unfortunately, I think because solar is kind of a new technology and it's something people don't really know, how it works, they're maybe not familiar with it. There are companies that are taking advantage of that opportunity to misrepresent either the technology or kind of what they're offering customers. So it definitely happens. And so I think my recommendation there, I think there is a need for more attention on consumer protections for solar, just to make sure that, people understand what they're signing up for, what they're purchasing, and are getting the best, the best deal that they can be. And really, I think you'll find it's a relatively small number of companies that are the bad actors that are causing the problems. And that's the case in a lot of industries, where companies are taking advantage of a situation where maybe people don't know a lot about what they're signing up for. So my recommendations are generally for folks who are considering installing solar to get a couple different quotes and, don't necessarily go with the company that knocks on your door. That's not to say that someone coming and knocking on your door is, necessarily a bad company, that they're necessarily trying to give you a bad deal. But, do some research, call a couple companies, and then they should provide quotes at no cost. And then, you can compare and contrast and kind of see which one is a good deal for you. Another kind of recommendation is sometimes people use financing in order to kind of pay off the upfront cost of the solar panels over time. And to just really look into the details of that and make sure that you understand, what the terms of the financing are, because sometimes there can be hidden fees, where it might look like you're getting a really good interest rate, for example, but there's a hidden fee in there. And it's not as good of a deal as the company is representing it to be. So, again, just do your homework like you would for any other big purchase, and make sure you understand what the terms are. And then the last recommendation is just to make sure you understand how the tax credits apply to you specifically, because there is a 30% tax credit for the cost of solar panels, which is really great. That really helps to reduce the cost. And but if you are someone who's not paying taxes, like maybe you're on a fixed income, the tax credit's not refundable, which means that you have to be paying at least that much in taxes to get the full amount of the incentive back. So again, if you're someone who's like on a fixed income, maybe you're not paying that much in taxes, you might not be eligible for the full amount of the tax credit. And so you just want to understand that going into it and know how much of it can apply to you. And we actually have a really great resource that is really focused on answering these questions for someone who's maybe interested in installing solar, but you don't know where to start or how to find a good company. And I will track down that link and I can share it with folks, because I think it's just important to make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into.
Awesome. Yeah, we would love that. Well, sorry, Vanessa, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
You're fine, Tatiana. Thank you so much, Kate. That was helpful. One more quick question, because I know you mentioned Solar for All, and there's millions of dollars that's coming to Arizona for that. Is there a timeline of when our community should expect to see that application, or when can they apply?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the exact date yet, but it probably will be sometime in 2025. And that's because, the funding has been awarded to the state of Arizona, and the Office of Resiliency is in the process of designing the program. So they have not kind of fully completed that step. And, when they do, we will definitely want to share information about how people can see if they're eligible and how they can sign up. But unfortunately, it probably will be 2025 before that's all available and set up and ready to go.
Thank you.
Good to know. That's all great information to know. I think that is there anyone else who has questions? I'm just assuming since Vanessa went for round 2 that we might be a little bit done with questions. All right, perfect. So I'm going to continue sharing my screen so that we can close out this session. I do really appreciate all of you guys for joining. It was a great presentation from Kate. A special thank you again to Kate for presenting and giving us all that information. I know I learned so much. I hope all of you did as well. For those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more, we will have plenty of educational resources on our Instagram and our Facebook, as well as a recording of this webinar posted for you guys to view and to share with your families. So we do ask that you guys share that as you may. If you would like some more information on the ACC, the Arizona Corporation Commission that Kate was talking about, we do have plenty of resources as well about them. So again, thank you so much all for joining. We will see you next time, and have a great rest of your night.